Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, HOD of the BSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version as usual, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the content on the channel. Follow us on social media and, of course, listen on every podcast listening platform available. Welcome to episode 50 of the podcast. We'll start the episode by talking about Italy, and it is Coppa Italia's final between Juventus and Inter Milan in the Stadio Olimpico, and Inter Milan managed to win the cup for this season after defeating Juventus 4-2 after extra time. The start was brilliant from Inter Milan, of course, with Nicolo Barella scoring a brilliant goal in the 7th minute to open scoring. But before that, and after that, actually, Dusan Vlahovic and Alexandro managed to equalise in the second half. Alexandro, making it 1-1, and then Dusan Vlahovic making it 2-1 for Juve. And the game looked set for good, really. I mean, Juve ended the first half on a brilliant note. They started the second half really well. Paulo Dybala seemed to be doing really well, of course, and he's a complete different player at the moment. Of course, the situation about him leaving the club at the end of the season obviously is throwing all of its shade over his presence on the pitch. He was substituted in the extra time and he wasn't happy. Juve missed a bunch of chances in the second half early on. Then Inter Milan, of course, put the pressure on. They brought in the likes of Dumfries. They brought in Alexis Sanchez late on. They brought in Joaquin Correa for Edin Dzeko. They gave more, I would say, enthusiasm and movement to their attacking department. And of course, the second goal came from a penalty given away by Giorgio Chiellini on his final with Juve as well, before leaving the club to the MLS. Apparently, is a bad night for the Juventinos. I mean, for people who support Juventus, I think it's going to be a bad night. It's not going to be the best of last memories, I suppose, for the likes of Dybala and Chiellini, but for Chiellini, he has a little bit more credit to rely on, I think, with the club. As for Dybala, unfortunately, as much as he is a great player, and he's an absolutely unbelievable talent, and whoever team's going to end up having in the summer after his contract expires officially, is going to be a big scalp, and there's big talks about joining Inter, actually, the side that they're facing in the final. There's joining Milan, with the rumoured Bahraini takeover supposedly happening in the summer. Maybe Dybala's going to be one of the deals going to Milan. There's PSG, of course, on the radar. There's Man United on the radar. There's all sorts of related players on the radar that have Paulo Dybala on their radar. But obviously, the spoils now go to Inter Milan with the victory and the cup win, and that guarantees us a Super Cup or a Supercoppa in Italia, where there is a Milan derby between them and AC Milan, of course, with the rest of the season, with 2 weeks left in the league in Serie A. We'll see how things go. But for Inter Milan, it was a great night. It was a great turnaround from the start of the game. Of course, the pace was the big answer, I think, for the game. Things got feisty in the end in this one, with Massimiliano Allegri being sent off, arguing with Inzaghi, arguing with the players of Inter Milan on the bench as well. It was a pretty feisty game, as you'd expect a Juve-Inter final to be, but it was a brilliant atmosphere anyway, and Inter Milan, of course, won the cup. Congratulations for them once again. Before talking about the Premier League, and we're going to give it the biggest of spaces, I think, in this one, because things are really getting interesting there. We're going to be talking about the La Liga quickly, just mention it briefly, the results, because there's nothing really that matters, I think, in La Liga. I would say anymore. The results of the midweek, of course, Valencia defeated Real Betis defeated Valencia 3-0. Granada lost Athletic Bilbao, defeated Athletic Bilbao 1-0. Barcelona defeated Celta Vigo 3-1 at the Camp Nou. Important victory for them to, firmly be second behind Real Madrid. Osasuna drawn against Getafe 1-1. Deportivo Alaves defeated Espanyol, that was on Wednesday yesterday, 2-1. Sevilla drawn goalless against Mallorca 0-0, dropping to fourth. after Atletico Madrid's win against Elche away from home 2-0, which almost guarantees Atletico Madrid a place in the Champions League next season. Of course, Sevilla as well, continuing the top four, with Betis dropping to 5th, because of their loss, of course, against Barcelona on the weekend, which could have made things different had they won that game. We could have been talking about an interesting top four battle anyway. But let's move on to the Premier League, as I mentioned, and it is indeed a very, I'm not going to say very exciting end to the season, because let's be fair, after the draw against Spurs, things feel deflating a little bit for Liverpool, and they have the right to be deflated, I suppose, after that draw against Spurs, and things continue to be more deflating, I think, because I assume most of Liverpool fans were expecting some sort of, I don't know, a result from City against Wolverhampton, a loss, for example, or a draw, and we're going to start, and that's what we're going to start from there, actually, and then we're going to retract to the games from the rest of the games in the midweek, which are not over. Of course, the rescheduled games. We still have Spurs versus Arsenal from the round 22 to play on Thursday. So we start from the Molineux, where City absolutely demolished Wolverhampton 5-1. It was the Kevin De Bruyne show. Kevin De Bruyne scored a super hat-trick in this game. Even hit the Haaland celebration as a sort of welcome to Erling Haaland, who's of course the biggest news of the weekend. Haaland joining Manchester City for a £51 million deal, 60 million euros, which is a steal, considering that the market value of Haaland almost reaching 180 million euros sometimes. That's quite the steal. But we're going to be talking about that in a separate episode. Obviously, we're going to be, doing on Saturdays, I mentioned we're going to be doing a special one talking about Bayern Munich, and we're going to be talking about Haaland's transfer to City, hopefully. But for this game, it was, the start was brilliant. City scored first thanks to De Bruyne, then of course equalised Wolverhampton thanks to Dendoncker in 11 minutes, and things looked set for a very exciting kind of the tennis football, where it is, one team attacks, the other team attacks, and Wolverhampton and City have a habit of having really great games and competitive games, to be fair. But this one was a one-sided game. 5-1 it was for City, and again, De Bruyne, one-man show basically for this one, scoring the 4 goals before Sterling coming in with the 5th. City were without Ruben Dias, of course, ruled out for the rest of the season. Without Kyle Walker, also ruled out for the rest of the season because of injuries as well, which was, at first people thought it was a worrying thing, as well as John Stones, of course. But, it looks like things are working just fine with Aymeric Laporte, and Nathan Ake, of course, probably started actually with Fernandinho as a centre-back, which is, a good thing for him that he's overthinking in the Premier League, because the opponents in the Premier League are, I'm not going to say much easier, but probably much more digestible and manageable, I think, than the opponents in the Champions League, because we saw how he does in the Champions League against Real Madrid just recently. So it was a pretty modified kind of lineup. He continued with a 4-2-3-1 with Gundogan playing with Rodri in a double pivot. De Bruyne, as I mentioned, is ruling the show here, and the guy is absolutely on fire at the moment as far as the assists, of course, and the goals, and absolutely performing really, really well. He's not on the assist chart this season mostly, but the elsewhere play that he does on the pitch, the other things that he does on the pitch, the running that he does, the movement that he does, and the way that he sets up play for his mates and for his teammates is absolutely tremendous. So I don't think he needs to have 20-something assists for the season to say that he's a great playmaker, but he's definitely someone who can change the outcome of any game on his own. And again, with Haaland coming next season, people are thinking maybe he's going to get 100 assists next season. Of course, he's not going to get 100 assists, but someone like Haaland being there is going to solve a lot of problems. Not all the problems, but a lot of problems for Man City anyway. So let's talk about the other results, as we mentioned, of course, and we're going to talk about the Liverpool result. As we spoke about City, Liverpool defeated Aston Villa 2-1, which is a bad result. on so many levels. The game was hard as it is, and then of course Douglas Luiz comes in and makes it 1-0 inside 3 minutes. Joel Matip equalised quickly inside 6, and the start was pretty frantic, and the game went 100 miles per hour basically from there. Liverpool in the second half were more dominant than the first, but they couldn't score the decisive goal until the 65th minute when Sadio Mane came in with the header from Luis Diaz's cross. It's a bad result because Liverpool need the goals. They're on 89 goals for the season. City on 94 goals. The criterion considered by the Premier League to break the tie, basically, in any situation where the points are the same, is the goal average, not the goal difference. So there's that. If they score, and City at the moment are absolutely battering teams. 5 against Newcastle, 5 against Wolves, which makes them on 94 goals for the season now. I mean, just in the space of 2 games, they went from 84 to 94. It's ridiculous. Liverpool, on the other hand, in 2 games, they scored 3 goals. Not a good return, considering that not just because of the games left are hard, but also because, Liverpool need the goals anyway. I mean, they're already on a 3-point deficit, and they need the goals now. So it looks for me that it's just going to be a matter of time and formality before we talk about City being champions once again for the 4th time out of the last 5 seasons, which is going to be a crazy thing to talk about. I mean, not to the point of saying Farmers League, even jokingly, but I think City are absolutely dominating at the moment, and the signing of Haaland is worrying some kind of people that, that's going to be an era of domination, like the Bundesliga with Bayern, like the Serie A with Juve, like the the Ligue 1 with PSG and stuff like that, even with the Eredivisie and Ajax Amsterdam. So this is a worrying sign for City. For Liverpool, they have the Champions League, I think, to think about. I think Jurgen Klopp, at the moment, or at this period of time, I think is realising that maybe the league is not going to be available, maybe the quadruple is not a thing anymore, and he has to work with the Champions League hopes instead of just, focusing on the league or trying to exhaust himself in the league. If I was Jurgen Klopp, I personally would give it up. And for a good reason. I'd give it up with the Champions League. I would win Champions League, and I would say, you know what, we did our best catching up City when we were 14 points behind. We caught with City up. We gave it our race. We gave it all, but it was one result that was basically the tiebreaker between us. The draw against Spurs came at the worst time when Liverpool were at full momentum, charging ahead for the rest of the season. Really, I mean, and so they almost took the game for granted against Spurs, and that was probably, for me, the thing that caught Liverpool off guard and made them lose those 2 points in the Anfield against Spurs. City, on the other hand, amongst all the statements, all the media talk of Guardiola saying that all the press is against us and supporting Liverpool and stuff, the reality is, it's not actually supporting Liverpool, it's supporting a title race, it's supporting a drama, supporting a narrative where there is 2 teams fighting till the end. That's why some people even turning around from the Premier League to the Serie A to look for a great title race between Inter Milan and AC Milan. It's really going down to the wire, and both sides have some hard matches to talk about. In there, and we're going to get to that tomorrow, of course, in the weekend preview episode. But clearly, Liverpool at the moment should give it up and should think about the bigger fish to fry, because legitimately they could go from potentially a quadruple to a Bayer Leverkusen style capitulation. It could be. It generally could be. I mean, not as bad, because Leverkusen literally lost the league in the last week of the season. But here's the thing. Liverpool could end up with the same capitulation and could end up having a bad end to the season, similar to Bayer Leverkusen one, and they could end up winning only the Carabao Cup this season, which is going to be not bad, because they never won the competition since Klopp came. But I think, from a point of view of expectations or from the fans' perspective, that is going to be a pretty big disappointment. Instead of getting a quadruple, getting only 1 trophy. But still, we need to hold our horses. Maybe the last 2 games of the season will have some crazy scenarios happening. Of course, these last 2 games, of course, Liverpool on in round 37. Liverpool are going to be playing Southampton away, not the easiest of games as well. And then you have Liverpool in the last game facing Wolves themselves on the Anfield Road for the third time in the last 5 seasons. They face Wolves in the final day. It's quite an interesting situation there for Liverpool. For City, of course, they play against West Ham away, which is not the easiest of games. It's probably the game where the Liverpool fans look forward the most to have City drop points in there, to have any sort of advantage going into the last game of the season. But it does look very unlikely that City are going to drop any points. And then you have City playing against Aston Villa in the final game of the season, which is going to be potentially formalities if City win the title officially on the penultimate day, because if the goal difference stays the same, if the goal average stays the same, they keep winning by fives and stuff like that, officially they're going to be winning the league on the 37th round anyway. So, elsewhere, of course, Watford drawn against Everton, 0-0, a game between two relegation fighters. Everton now are 16 with 36 points, but they're still in the battle. They still have a game in hand. Of course, they still have a game in hand. Burnley as well underneath them have a game in hand. You have Leicester, Crystal Palace all having games in hand as well. There's Spurs and Arsenal on the table having games in hand. But let's focus on the relegation battle as well for a bit. Everton, after all the money they spent, they made big investments in the last couple of seasons. They brought in even Ancelotti early on this season to be their coach. So it has to be said, or last season to be their coach, but it has to be said that Everton are a victim of their own sort of mess. They brought in Frank Lampard in the middle of the season. He didn't know what to do, really. You can't save a sinking ship, I think. They're not in the relegation zone, but they're very, very close, and the end of the season is going to be very hectic for them. They need the points, they need the win from every game that they will play. Everton play Brentford this Sunday, then they play Crystal Palace next midweek for the game that they have in hand, and then they have to play Arsenal away from home, and then for the last game of the season they play Arsenal away from home. So it will be quite a big day in the Premier League for them when they play Arsenal on the final day. We don't know what the situation may be. Maybe they will survive. Maybe they will be already gone down by this point. Then you have Burnley, of course. Then you have Burnley underneath them, just behind them with 34 points. Leeds seem to be the surefire candidates, I suppose, if you can say that, for relegation out of the three, because you look at the schedule for Leeds United. Leeds United, they have a little bit of a tough time. They play Brentford. They play Brentford away from home, which is going to be a big one in the final day. Of course, you think the defensive problems, I think, for Leeds are the kinds of things that led to this situation being for them. 77 goals conceded for them. They're the second worst defence in the league behind Norwich with 78. And Norwich are relegated already, so they don't have anything to play for. So imagine Leeds trying to survive and conceding 77. They have Brighton in the penultimate round. Then, of course, on the final match day, they play Brentford away from home. Leeds United. You look at Burnley's schedule for the last two games. They play they play Spurs on round 37, and they finish off by playing Newcastle United. So basically, a couple of really tough games for Burnley. Compared to Leeds, they might sound, Leeds games sound easier, but I think you look at Everton as well. They're playing Brentford. Then you have, Arsenal, as I mentioned, in the final match day, and between those, there's a game against Crystal Palace for them. So it's going to be definitely three of the hardest possible games for Everton. Elsewhere, as we mentioned, Everton drawn against Watford 0-0. Chelsea defeating Leeds United 3-0. Speaking of that, of course, defeating Leeds United 3-0. Adding more defensive problems upon defensive problems for Chelsea. It's a good victory to stomp their place in third, not go any further down the table, which is going to be bad if they somehow finish fourth at the end of a season where they were tipped to be Premier League title contenders. They were Premier League title contenders by Christmas, but they managed to flop it later on. A good victory on so many reasons and so many ways that Lukaku as well returned scoring. Maybe he will save himself with these last couple of games. Maybe he will start in the FA Cup final on Saturday. Maybe he will be a big part of the project of Chelsea going next season, which is going to be a positive if he is in that project and he returns to goal scoring form. I mean, it would have been, because it would be a big, massive flop if he fails again at Chelsea and leaves after being bought for 115 million euros from Inter Milan. 3-0 victory, a pretty, I'm not going to say pedestrian, but I think a more routine victory for Chelsea. The game was one-sided basically. Leeds have no resistance whatsoever, and they seem to be just taking the punches at the moment, Leeds. They're just being punched all over the place by any team that faces them. For Chelsea, as you mentioned, they have to finish the season really strong if they want to. If they want to, start next season on a clean slate. Of course, after the takeover was complete and there's new owners in the club and stuff like that. So they don't have to worry about anything else. They have just to worry about transfers and trying to bring a new blood to the club in certain positions. Of course, with players certainly leaving. Rudiger officially is now a Real Madrid player, is going to be playing for them next season. Then you have someone like Christensen potentially leaving to Barcelona. Then you have Azpilicueta. Then you have all the sorts of situations with players having their contracts up for this summer and that they could leave. So yeah, it will definitely be a very interesting situation for Chelsea, and let's see how things will pan out with the new owner, the new ownership for Chelsea, and with takeover, and what's going to be the strategy for the American owners for Chelsea for the next few years. Tottenham Hotspur Arsenal, of course, is the game left for this midweek action. Big derby, North London for the top 4 places. Of course, Arsenal have the advantage in that one, and they're looking for any result that will keep them at that place. Of course, a draw would be good, but a victory would be even better, because then they would break with 7 points, and that, of course, is going to officially mean that they are in the top 4, and they will be back in the Champions League next season. So the win, I think, is a must for Arsenal with their good. I mean, they have a good form about them since Arteta, sort of focused on Arsenal this season and no European competition and stuff like that. And I said it so many times that Arsenal having no European competition is a big advantage for them. Genuinely, they feel like a side that they could be in the top 4. Need improvements, of course, next season if they return to Champions League football, but certainly for this season they did well enough, I think, considering the start that they have, and everybody tipping them for a bad season in the mid-table or even lower. But they were absolutely turning things around, and they managed to get great results in the last month or so, beating Chelsea, beating United, beating West Ham. Big results to climb up the ladder in the top 4 race and end up in the position where they are at the moment. Just, I would say 1 game away, 1 win away, I think, from being in the Champions League next season. If they get it against Spurs, it's going to be all the more sweeter for the Arsenal fans. Tottenham, who are looking as well to get closer. The win for them is going to get them closer to Arsenal, and then they're going to be waiting for a simple slip-up, I suppose, for the Arsenal fans. Spurs, for the last game, for the penultimate game, they play Burnley this Sunday, and then they play Norwich, which is going to be an easy trip away, I suppose, against the side already relegated from the Premier League. For Arsenal, is going to be Newcastle away, and then Everton at home. And as you mentioned, you don't know really what Everton are going to be like at the end of the season at home. You don't know how they will manage their situation with the relegation. You don't know how things are going to be ended up. Newcastle, a game that might be easier than it sounds, really, because Newcastle do not really need much from the season. They're safe at 14th, but they need to improve their positioning and to end the season as the highest as they can, to start from a big place next season for the Geordies. So that's it for this episode. That's it for the Premier League. Talking about the Premier League, of course, we're going to be talking about it tomorrow in the preview. We're previewing the next round 37, and going into those final rounds of the season. It's going to be amazing to talk about the rest of the battles for the Premier League. Thanks for watching, listening. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Follow us on social media, like, share, subscribe. Listen to us on any platform where you listen to a podcast, and of course, join us and subscribe for more. We're on the way to the 2K. Hopefully we get there pretty soon. Thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.